Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Welcome to Electro Live. This show, of course, exists in order to, like I always say, to pay homage not only to the new artists, but also the veterans and legends in the world of electro and hip hop. So tonight, we have a really special guest. We've got Configa, who
What's up?
is, hey, how's it going, man? How you
I'm
feeling,
good,
brother?
pal. I'm good, bro.
Good.
I hope you're good too, man.
Yeah, I'm hanging in there, man, having fun, doing my thing. Always a pleasure and an honor to sit down with you guys and learn more about you and how you're actually shaping the hip hop culture and the
Yeah,
electro
man.
culture, respectively. Now, I know for you, you've been a really big force in like shaping hip hop culture for like more than like 20 years or so.
Yeah, a long time.
And yeah, and you've been producing a lot for a lot of iconic, artists and folks that are on the underground scene like Young MC. More recently, you've been working with even Big Daddy Kane, you know,
King.
uh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
all of these
Master
guys, Arrested
Ace,
Development. Yes, yes,
Rest
sir.
Development, Chuck D,
How did
and
all
yeah.
this start, man? You've got to go back to the beginning and
Wow.
talk to me, man. How did you get into, well, first of all, let's even go back farther than that because this is interesting. You are in the UK, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, where were you born and how and what sort of musical influences did you come up with and how, so it's a three-part compound question, and
Good
how did you
question.
get into the music business? Let's
Good
start from
question.
there.
Wow. Where am I from? I'm from a place called Newcastle in the northeast of England, and we're otherwise known as Geordies, and big. Basically everything revolves around the football club in the city. It's not known for its hip hop; it's known for its dance music primarily. So I was kind of in the minority back in the day, and so that's where I'm from. What got me into hip hop was literally as random as it was like 1988. I was listening to Radio One, which is not a noted hip hop station. It's like what the biggest station in the country. And I just heard like De La Soul came on the radio. I was already familiar with Salt and Pepper and Push It and stuff, but I wasn't as big on that as some of the girls I knew were. And then I heard De La Soul and it was like 1988, and I was like, wow, what is this? This is a rap. And from that point on, it was just as spontaneous as that. It just hit me like that. I just loved it.
Mm.
I just loved it from the second I heard it. It just resounded with me. It was resonance. Yeah.
Well, that was a great time to come in
Oh
because that
wow, was
was
it
that
ever
was like, they call it the golden
the
age of hip hop.
golden era? Yes, the
Yes,
golden age,
sir.
golden era, all of that. Like, did that? Little did I know. Little did I know.
That's really, I think, really what helps hip hop really survive because from my perspective, like when I was coming up, what really got me were the first records like Rapper's Delight. Of course, I
Oh
heard
wow,
that.
bro.
All of
Mm.
those things, I kind of heard them. I heard like the Fatback Band back in the
Oh
70s that
wow,
had a
that's
little
even
rap
even
stuff.
even just before the Sugar Gang. I mean, I've
Yes,
worked with
sir.
Sugar Gang, but the Fatback Band with King Tim the Third was the
Yep.
first recorded hip hop track. Yes, yeah,
Yeah, indeed. I heard that and
yeah.
I was like, this is really cool and different and really out there. And what set it off for me was Planet Rock. It had the electro sound and it had
Oh
like this
yes, yeah,
different,
yeah, yeah.
it was like a game changing sort of thing for
I took
rap
it from
music.
Gary Newman, the sample Gary Newman. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Because you like your Electro and you know that.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. All of that stuff came like
Kraftwerk and
around the
Kraftwerk as well,
Kraftwerk.
German. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Trans Europe Express
That's right. That's right.
was
Yep.
lifted, and Africa Bambaataa was playing all that stuff up in the Bronx at his gigs and with the Zulu Nation, and he would just really do something different, anyways,
That's
because a
right.
lot of folks that came to his parties were
Mhm.
the punk rockers and people like that.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like Malcolm McLaren,
Mm,
who then did the Buffalo Girls track. But yeah, he
that's
was
right.
he was up in the yeah, like Sex Pistols manager, obviously. So you don't get
Yep.
much more punk than that.
Yeah. And the legends like Herbie Hancock jumped in on the
Yes.
movement and got
Yeah.
with Grandmaster DST, and they,
Blondie, who were a punk before they were pop, they were a punk band.
there you
Yes,
go.
yeah, yeah.
There you
I
go.
saw that documentary Punk actually a few years ago on Netflix. When they had like Blondie in there, they had Johnny Rotten was in there. I love that documentary, actually. Great documentary.
Fab Five Freddy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got down with all of that, and
She did.
all of that stuff. I think that was really pivotal in helping hip hop come to life. But
Hugely.
huge, but the thing about hip hop was it was the one musical form that was changing rapidly over the years. Like,
oh yeah, dramatically.
Run DMC came out, of course there's the Trinity, like Kool Moe D and
That's
the
right.
different folks
That's
that
right.
came out that made up that sort of the holy trinity of hip hop at that particular time.
Yeah.
But Run DMC came in, man, and changed the game up with, not only the production style, it was more raw.
Rick Rubin, who obviously
Rick Rubin,
but with the Beastie Boys as well, but also he's a rock producer, really. And so he had that rock element to it, which was crazy. Yeah, man.
Sucker MCs, like,
oh yeah,
it was just a beat program, I guess, and it was just them rapping on it and just coming with a different aggressive style, and they
Beautiful.
had this kind of
yeah.
And then LL and all of these guys kind of came after that.
Yeah, early Def Jam was amazing. Because obviously you had the Beasties, Run DMC, LL Cool J. Just like, wow, man. Wow.
I loved it, man. I was eating it up because it went from sort of the nursery rhyme kind of party stuff to a more clever lyrical style of like Tila Rock, LL Cool J, kind of like they were in the same sort of
the
subject
sort of
matter.
Mid-80s it changed. The mid-80s it kind of changed from like the early party stuff. Yeah. And I would say, obviously, people always say that Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5, The Message, that was like 82, which was the start of Melly Mel was probably the first lyricist that we had in hip hop. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So,
he's got to be one of the greatest of all time, right there.
For that reason,
that reason, that context does it.
Yeah, the context. The first dude just literally knock it out the park with Street Tales. Like broken glass everywhere. People piss on the stage. They just don't care. Like I am. Like,
dude, it just so poetic and so prophetic. And even their production was really on point. Like, Planet Rock had dropped, and then The Message came out, was a little slower tempo.
Yes, it was.
But it gave a really good and I don't know, I've read a lot about
it. It was still electro. It had still had synths. But like you said, it was becoming slower. And that's before sampling hit. Sampling was like about 86, around about that. So it was still not, sampling wasn't big, but sampling became massive just a few years later. The tempo had already slowed already. But in the early days, the sort of early 80s was very fast tempo. As
the
Planet Rock,
melding, melding was there. Even a little later, a couple years later, Mantronix came out, beat programmer.
Yes. Yeah, Curtis Mantronix, man.
I could never tell if this was electro. Is this hip hop? Is this electro? It's so 808 driven. I don't know.
Yeah. An amalgamation, like Mantronix, man.
Genius.
Underrated, I would still say.
Incredible, man. He was an incredible beat programmer, producer. And so we get to the time when you are listening to De La Soul.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure you're listening to
the proper golden era. Well, they say golden era could be like 86 to like 92, but some people say it's 87 to like 95. It just depends who you ask.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah. And how did you get? I know that you loved the music. You heard the records in the golden era. And how did you manage to get into it, coming from where you came from, which didn't really have a huge hip hop presence, I guess, at the time? How did that come about, man?
Like what I said just before, when I was literally just listening to the radio at 8 years old, and this music came on, and it was like the rhythms, the sound, what I didn't know was the sample at the time, just the what I now know was the syncopation, the flow, the cadence, and like, wow, soulful. It just hit me because I didn't know anybody else that was into hip hop at that point. Like we weren't discussing hip hop. I got all my friends at the time into hip hop. I was the person because like I said, we didn't have a reference guide. I didn't have people put me onto it. Didn't have elders who were hanging around who put me on hip hop. I was the person who got anyone I knew into hip hop. So bro, there was no. It was like a eureka moment. Really, it just spoke to me internally. I don't know what else. It's just hit me.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
but it
that's
is what it
amazing.
is.
That is
Yeah,
really amazing how hip hop could reach out,
mm.
overseas like that and grab
Crazy,
an audience like that. Like
crazy.
just phenomenal. Like I can understand with the electro, with the house music, with the
Yeah,
dance music, all that kind of seemed
mm.
like a natural fit for Europe because
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I
for
lived
sure.
in Europe for a while, so I know what the kids were like, and it was always dance oriented,
Yeah, yeah.
the
I wasn't hitting
discotheques
any
or
clubs
whatever,
back then. I was way too young for that
the
stuff. So
raves,
like,
yeah.
and there wasn't any radio stations that were catering for hip hop. This is pre UMTV Raps, or
Hmm.
just well, certainly before just before. Plus, I didn't get cable for like a few years after anyway. I didn't get cables came until the early 90s. There was no hip hop publications. There was
Hmm.
no hip hop on the radio apart from a few songs here and there, which is what I caught, and that was it. And then I started going hunting in our local import shop, and that's when I started stumbling across other tapes, and then one thing led to another. Really, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you see any live hip hop around that time, like concerts or anything?
N- Not around that time. Like I went with my dad to some. I went to various gigs, but nothing hip hop until the early 90s.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Like
Okay.
I had a ticket to go. Like somebody wanted me to go and see Vanilla Ice in 1990, and I didn't want to go.
Mm.
So I
Right.
could have seen hip hop a bit earlier than I did a couple of years earlier, but I didn't want to go. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think who was actually touring back in that time. I know there was quite a big few artists, but I'm just wondering. I know
In
the
terms of
Fresh.
hip hop, because don't forget where I'm from was not a hub of hip hop. So where I'm
Right.
from was very limited in who we did not have.
Hmm.
So not like London where people would routinely turn up and tour. Where we were a bit more of an outpost. So the first hip hop gig I went to by myself was the Far Side, which is a little bit later, a little bit
Hmm.
like yeah,
Yeah.
a little bit later in the
Hmm.
90s. But just trying to think. Like there was a lot of rock. I used to go to rock music gigs with my dad. I used to see my dad's band. So I went to a lot of gigs, but I'm trying to in terms of hip hop.
Hmm.
My dad wasn't going to take me to some hip hop gig, so I didn't go until I was probably 14 to my first hip hop gig.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. And how did you manage to how did you start making music? Like I guess you bought like some gear back then or what inspired you to
Nothing
do
as
that?
glamorous as that. No.
Mm.
What I did was I just used back in the remember the double cassette decks. I would
Mhm.
just play the beat on one, record on the other, and like
Oh
that kind
yeah.
of that was just a sample because I
Pause
started off
mixing.
as a
Yeah.
rapper. I just started doing
Mhm.
that, and
Hmm.
then recorded back onto the tape, and then double tracking it. And
Mhm.
yeah, so it started like that until around about I got my first PC in around about 97, which is still the golden era. And yeah,
Mhm.
got like a basic microphone, start recording into that. And then I was on forums and stuff because there was no social media back then.
Mhm.
Forums and battling people on forums and we used to call it text battling or whatever it was called at the time. And yeah, then I started slowly recording vocals, and then I started recording little mixtapes that I would sell locally when I would
Mhm.
go to clubs and stuff in the late
Okay.
90s. And then I eventually got around to collaborating with people online because online was sort of becoming big, and
Mhm.
collaborate with some American artists, one of which signed me to his record label in 2000. No, sorry,
Okay.
2001. 2000. But
Okay.
I put out my first album by myself in 2000. Sold it locally. Um, yeah, like marketing was just me on the ground, like pushing it in clubs and stuff, and friends and affiliates and
Mm.
DJs that I knew in clubs. Yeah, yeah.
Were you selling CDs or vinyl
CDs.
or CDs?
C
Yeah.
I was not on vinyl right then. It was CDs. CDs that I
Mhm.
built myself, bro.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it
Gotcha.
was
Gotcha.
DIY. It was proper DIY. I couldn't get anyone to like facilitate that at that point. So I didn't have a professionally made CD until I signed with a record label in LA, strangely enough, and my first proper CD was in 2002.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And what was that project back then?
That was a project called King of Linguistics, and that was my second album. I'd been on a few mixtapes before then, but I was still finding my feet. But you know, for its time, good project.
Nice.
I did all the beats pretty much, and that's when I started getting heavy into the beats, making most of the beats for that album as well, as far back as then. So yeah.
How did you make those beats? What did you use?
At that particular time, it was talking 2001, 2002, I was still using my PC at the time. I was using little programs that I could get, beginning to chop up samples, looping and stuff. I didn't get any hardware until a bit later, to be honest with you. I didn't get any hardware until probably about 2005. So a few years after.
Okay. So it was mainly, even back then, it was more DAW driven. So that's kind of awesome because a lot of people were struggling going to studios and paying out all this money. And
yeah, bro, I couldn't afford that back then. So like the idea of like studio time at that point was like, man, nah, I'm just doing DIY stuff. I'm selling it. Yeah, and then things started progressing, and people wanted to hear more of me. And then I could start to afford studio time, local studios, and then I started, you know, connecting more locally, getting hookups and stuff, and that kind of thing. Yeah.
That's great, man. And how did you make these contacts in the States for all that?
Oh,
We said
bro.
it was online, so just
bro,
kind of chatting with folks and everything.
Yeah, bro. Literally all started from the message boards in the late 90s, and text battling, and then recording remotely with people way before it was fashionable, put on floppy disks and stuff. And then, like I said, I'm still in touch with guy B Down, who I worked with the first time in 99, 2000, and that's when I got my first ever track played in a nightclub, which people didn't know who I was in that nightclub because it's an R&B club, and they were dancing to my music. And I remember I was like, whoa, the first time I've ever heard my stuff in a nightclub, and everyone's like vibing to this and don't realize I'm the guy that's doing the music. So yeah, I'm still in touch with that guy to this day. So I was like 22 years later. So it's a long time. But yeah, so it's, and I've met him in person. You know, we linked in London. So yeah, it's a blessing. And those were early days, and it was like the Wild West, the internet, the internet stuff. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's almost like you wonder sometimes, is it easier to get in the business back then, or was it easier to get in the business now because it's so saturated and so much to get from?
That's true. It's true because it was way harder to get yourself put on because I remember we used to have to like do deals with CD distributors who would like have to like hook us up with Sam Goody in the States and HMV over here and Virgin Records over here, and like even like anywhere, you know, just physical shop. There was no online downloads. iTunes hadn't even hit yet. It wasn't even iTunes. It was just literally CDs. And then eventually iTunes came on the scene with iPods and stuff. And then obviously after that it was, you know,
streaming
and all that lot. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so hard. You know, I hear this all the time, like just talking to folks that even some of the older producers are telling you, it's like, wow, with the streaming and no one's really downloading music because they can get it, they can pirate it so easily. And so mainly they're going to these streaming platforms to make money, but then they're getting like pennies on the dollar for X amount of plays.
Bro.
And it's so hard.
0.03 cents of a dollar per stream. Like, so you need a fair fee to get to what we used to get for CDs between $10 and $15. You have to get several thousand streams to even touch that. Yeah,
that's just amazing. That's hard work to hustle that up too.
Work. So financially, it was easier then. To get noticed, like you said, double-edged sword, because back then harder to get put on, but easier to get noticed when you were on. Now it's anyone can do it, but like you say, saturate. Everyone's making music, and there's a lot of terrible music. So much terrible music. Yeah.
In the day and out tomorrow, and it's like
That's right.
And even I kind of got a taste of a little bit of that when I lived in Europe. I was working with this record label and distributor, I think ZYX or something they were called back then, and they were signed like an artist called Down Low, which was like a rap artist thing from Germany, and they were traveling and doing tours and stuff, and there were all these other artists. Like I'd perform with them, because I was doing some of their music and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and even some of their vocal stuff. I was with them on that too. But like doing that, all these artists like Roller Girl and all these fly by night, like little silly, little corny, goofy little acts,
Yeah.
And then even Down Low, they came out with that one record. Then they had a little follow up, maybe a couple months later. And then that's it. They're done. Like
all
next,
she wrote.
Yeah, let's churn them out. We need the next thing.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was so hard, I think, for a lot of artists to kind of have some kind of longevity. At least in Germany,
it was super hard, man. Yeah. Like I'm amazed that I started doing music as far back as that, and I'm still making music now. And actually, arguably, well, not even arguably, I am at the biggest sort of like stature that I've ever been, and I'm in my 40s now, bro. So I'm in my early 40s, and like, why did this not happen to me when I was in early 20s? But it didn't. I kind of was bubbling, but it wasn't like I wasn't charting or anything, because we got on the Canadian chart recently, like in fact last week, and so yeah, that European chart was preposterous to me. I mean,
I've seen your activity. I'm friends with you on Facebook, obviously,
exactly.
And
for a while, bro, for a while.
Yeah.
So yeah, man, I'll be watching your trajectory, same way you've been watching mine. So
yeah, and it's just amazing. Like as we get older, like we're around the same age, pretty much, and it's like, we started out in music doing a lot of different things and trying to go do it this way, do it that way. How are we going to make it? We're going to try this one. Okay,
that's right.
Let's reset it. Let's go at it.
You've done several things.
So many different things. Yeah. Nothing ever seems to get you where you exactly want to go, but you get some things out of it, and some things don't really pan out. And then all of a sudden, things start kind of picking up in one area, and it's like, okay.
I think if you try hard enough and you keep trying and you don't give up, then sometimes really good things can come your way. Hopefully, and that's been the case for me, because the last, like, I would say 5 years has been the purple patch of my career, which is something I've been striving for nearly 15 years at least.
Yeah. And for me, like for the last, I would say maybe even 10, 15 years, I kind of just slowly sort of resigned myself to just look, I have the bug, this thing called music, where I just want to write stuff and work with people and do this and that. And for my own sanity, I just said, just be satisfied with that. Like, not because if I put too much expectation on it, I'm just going to get disappointed again and just keep burning myself out and then want to quit this crap. And then it's like, no, you're not, because you still wake up in the middle of the night with tunes in your head. And
of course,
it's not going anywhere.
Still got a dream, man. And like, we can rest when we're dead. That's saying, you know what I mean? It's like, if you still got a dream, follow it, man. Pursue it at all costs, man.
At all times, man. Absolutely.
100%.
What would you say over the years were the really greatest things or highlights that when you think back and you think, my experience in the music profession as I've gone along, what were some of the greatest moments, would you say?
For me personally, 100% working with Chuck D, being signed to Chuck's record label, working with Speech and Arrested Development, because these are guys that I grew up on, bro. I mean, working recently with Moni Love, again, someone who was on my bedroom wall when I was like 9. So yeah, like working with people who are literally working with people as peers who I literally grew up on, literally grew up on. That's a full circle moment, man, bro. Seriously.
How about Chuck D? What is he like working with him?
Great guy, sincere. he's just got so much knowledge, bro. He doesn't suffer fools gladly, but he puts you. He's a natural born leader. And to someone coming up, he is like the best mentor, or one of the best mentors you could ever have. I mean, he's been it all, seen it all, done it all, and he like I don't want to blow my own trumpet, but the tweet was put out there, and with Chuck's permission, that he called me legend. Like, what are you talking about, Chuck? He goes, because legends are people that keep pushing the boat out, and you do, Configa. I'm paraphrasing here, but for someone like Chuck D to call me legend, like, are you kidding me? You're Chuck
That
D.
is awesome.
Like, are you for real? Like, so
yeah.
He was basically trying to say that legends in the mind, and that anyone can be a legend. Pretty much, that's what he's trying to say.
Yeah. Well,
but just to hear that from him was crazy.
Oh, absolutely, man.
He is one.
He's a legend. Yeah, and I like the way, even from the beginning, you know, he went to bat, you know, with his label. His whole group, you know, it's like they didn't want flavor because they didn't see the fit. They didn't see
exactly
the dynamic there, and he saw it and he knew it, and he was not going to back down regardless of, you know, we might lose our deal, we might lose our opportunity.
Man of principles. Man of principle.
Man of principle, man. You said it. That's absolutely right.
I respect him for that so much, man, because he could have had a lot more celebrity endorsements, the same as my man's speech could have, because famously he turned down a Coca-Cola commercial for $1 million back in around, I think it was 92 it was. And he just turned it down, but it wasn't fitting the brand. He was like, how are we going to rap about, like, you know, our revolution with the track we did for the Malcolm X soundtrack, and then all of a sudden be selling Coke cans? So I respect that greatly, that kind of taking a stand against the capitalism system.
Oh, absolutely, man. That is again, someone who's full of integrity, and it actually that it's one of those commonalities that you'll find out, like, in interviewing a lot of these folks, is that these are people that are highly successful in what they've done, and they've never ever sold out in any kind of way.
Never sold out. Always kept their integrity. Always kept their morals, and were always true to who they were, despite early successes. Always kept it going. Never tried to change their style when that kind of consciousness went out of fashion, when it was replaced by like the more gangster stuff. Never tried to like change it up and try to become harder. Like, no, they kept it true to them. And then these things come back in circles, because ultimately Def Jam ended up re-signing Public Enemy for that last record. And then myself and AD are enjoying the biggest purple patch they've had since the 90s, 25 years later. Like, you know, to be in charts and stuff, crazy. Crazy. I mean,
amazing stuff.
Speech will say that himself, that he said just the other day, for the last 2 albums that I've been involved with, he's in his zone again. They're in his zone. Like, that's beautiful. Yeah, beautiful.
Oh man, absolutely, man. After all these years, and that gives, you know, artists like myself a lot of inspiration to never let go, and always allow yourself to continue to be inspired and
100%, bro. 100%.
Absolutely, man. Now
it's never
another
too
thing,
late. I'm living proof of that. It isn't, because
it is never too. You're the example
embodiment of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's why I want to really highlight you, because you've got a great story, and it's a very inspiring story. And in fact, some of the things you've done, I really want to explore too. I know you've gotten your PhD, and you made a doctoral thesis on hip hop and ethnicity. Can you go into a little bit about that? Let us know about that.
Yeah, it was on the white appropriation of hip hop music in my targeted city where I'm from, Newcastle upon Tyne. And I thought, what could I write 90,000 words about, which is the PhD length? And I thought, hip hop, number one, but to put a sociological slant on it, it was white appropriation. Why? Because I'm white. And just because I knew that it would be interesting sociological study. And I knew that I would be able to get lots of interviews from the people on the scene in the area I'm from originally, and so it was just perfect. And also doing comparative studies between what was happening in the UK, what was happening in the US, the divergent way that things, because for example in the US in the 60s they called things race music, whereas they didn't here. In fact, the blues guys over there that were ignored came over to the UK and got mad love, and then basically it started off like a blues explosion, which like influenced the likes of John Lee Hooker, influenced the likes of Fleetwood Mac, who were a blues band, the Animals, who were a blues band, the Rolling Stones, originally a blues band. These people all, Eric Clapton was a blues guitarist. So for example, they all started off from that, and which I found fascinating. And also Jimi Hendrix, for example, came over here and got mad love. So yeah, I did all that, and then I also talked about evolution of hip hop and how basically, ultimately, how in my area, which is not known for being very ethnically diverse, that in the place of like not having a sort of a local black population per se to act as a reference guide like there would be in London or other big cities, that people were defining their own identity from the media and taking snippets of the media and words and language and obviously hip hop dress codes and infusing that with the local. So the term that I used was global and local. And so that they would have this identity, which is very divergent to the local dance culture and the kind of more perfunctory local people. They were like very much more kind of, I guess you could say, exotic, really, American infused and African American infused. Loads of influences which they wouldn't have had if it wasn't for the media. 100%.
Yeah, that is very interesting because
yeah, for sure.
I could imagine, like, you know, and living in Europe, I can also picture it and remember
Yeah.
back in the 90s when I lived in Germany, the perception of, well, not just Black Americans, but just Americans in general was oftentimes a little exaggerated or a little bit
Yeah.
off, especially
Yeah.
when it came
It's
to Black
romanticized. It's
Americans. Yeah,
romanticized.
romanticized, and it's a
Yeah.
certain perception of a message that they get that isn't necessarily there. Like for me,
that happened in my area, the targeted area I was talking about. Like basically, it was an imagined sort of blackness, which is not necessarily true, but it's what they gleaned from the records and gleaned from what they were presented. Because, like I said, they didn't have a local populace to directly refer to, so it was kind of gleaned, like Germany would have been gleaned from the media. So it wasn't accurate per se. Yeah.
And just some of it was a disconnect, like just not understanding. Like I remember working in the studios with some producers, and we would talk because they knew I was from America. They knew where I was from in America, and they were always asking me, well, what is the deal with the Black community in America? What is that whole thing about? Because it seems like to them, they were telling me, like, they seem like they're so angry and they want to fight power and change the world, but then they have, you know, they have the big nice cars and the jewelry and the blah blah blah. Like, we don't understand what does that mean? Like, are they oppressed, or what are they? Like, what is the situation?
That's
it's
right.
Like, well,
Yeah.
there's so much into that dynamic that you would have to understand. And if you're not around it, like even in America, a lot of white folks from a certain demographic would not understand it either, even because it's just
exactly.
if you're not around a culture and people, and that's really the key, I think, to learn about anything is just be around it, you know.
That's right. Just
immerse yourself,
directly be around it. And I agree. Yeah. But a lot of the people I encountered were literally, because there was in the 70s and 80s, lots of coal mines were closed down and stuff, and there was like disrupting the sort of pathway into sort of like their formative years, which would have carried them on to being like miners, and it was a very rigid structure. When our government destroyed all that, there was a generation or 2 generations of people that didn't know where they belonged, didn't know where they fitted in, and so a small segment of that found almost a home within hip hop, where it was forming their worldview, forming their cultural identity, which had been abandoned because for like centuries before, it had been formed around the coal pits which no longer existed. So their dad's experience was different to theirs because their dads were down the mines, and that wasn't the case for them. So that I did think that there was almost like an identity that was unlike anything that their family had experienced, because like just taking all these vast influences from overseas that their internet obviously helped, and the media and the videos and all that stuff helped, which is unlike anything that their family would have experienced before.
Yeah, it's so interesting how the sort of local dynamics play involved in the creative process with
That's right.
artists and musicians. Even like with the electro stuff, like
Yeah.
kind of going back and researching about Detroit. Like Detroit is a city where it's almost like a birthplace of what they call techno, like
That's right.
in America, anyways. Um, and a lot of electro artists came out of there, you know, like Juan Atkins and Cybertron and all of these guys. But listening to their story, what spawned that whole sound in general, because you got to understand Detroit back then, especially where these guys came from, very urban, very African American,
Wasn't anything
you
to
know.
be messed with.
Yeah, and
not at all.
it was just, you know, street life, you know.
Yeah.
But
Like Chicago, I think didn't house music start in Chicago?
Chicago, the
That's
same
right.
situation, that
Yeah,
because
same
there was
thing.
a relationship there, because
Exactly.
both of the same urban environment was the same, but there was the heart of Detroit was the auto industry.
That's
And the
right.
auto industry went away, like it dried up dramatically,
Very
and it
similar to the
turned
mines out here. Very similar story.
yeah, so in the
Yeah.
early 80s,
Yeah.
like the industry went away, and then Detroit turned into a big slum. And
Yes, it
so,
did. Yeah.
and the influence though, and what people harken back to, was that age of technology, you know. Like
Yeah.
Juan Atkins would tell you, like, my dad worked at an auto plant, and to see the robots putting the cars together, and
Yeah.
it was like we were fascinated, like, with the technology, and wow, this is really cool. And that stuff kind of infused in their consciousness.
Yeah.
So when they
I can
made the
see that.
music, they were picturing robots and things like that in a future
Futuristic.
utopia.
Yeah.
And and it was almost like a rebellion against, you know, the slumification of Detroit, you know, like,
Yes.
this is our way of
Yes.
expressing the world we want to live in, like a world of the future where we have technology again, and we have money again, and we're
Bro,
on this
it's
thing.
very similar. The shared experience is real for basically post-industrialism, post-industrial areas such as Detroit, such as the area I come from, and various other areas who have been that local and kind of traditional economy is being decimated, and then they're finding influences and shared experiences from other places.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. And you know, so that's really interesting, that you studied, you know, the connections,
Yes.
and how all that breaks
Yeah,
down
I
from
mentioned
that.
Detroit. I mentioned Detroit, and actually, famously, John Lee Hooker, who was from Detroit or lived in Detroit for certainly a big period of time, he was brought over by a guy called Eric Burden, who was the lead singer for the Animals, A House of the Rising Sun in the '60s. It was a big hit, and he brought him over to my area. And apparently, John Lee Hooker said to him, "Wow, I thought I'd seen all, but Newcastle's wilder than Detroit." Like, so again, the parallels are being drawn even by someone like John Lee Hooker. Yeah, man, blues legend.
Yeah, and it really is weird how you mentioned the cultural appropriation, and we can look at the history of music, like blues, rock and roll,
Yeah,
even country music. You know, it gets its start in, you know, African American tradition,
100%.
and it's never, you know, never has historically been sung that way. Now these days you can get all kinds of information, and there's so many organizations, so
Yeah,
many things we can get this information, that where does rock and roll come from, where do these artists
that's
get
right.
influenced by. But
Blues, which then became rhythm and blues, which then became hip. Not the R&B that is the soulful R&B, rhythm and blues, which had like, you know, like sped up blues, basically Elvis, and then and then actually rock. But yeah, like people, but country music's even more kind of like mysterious because the links are not like basically, if you spoke to like 90% of the population, they would never think country music started off as a black art form. They would never think it. They just wouldn't think it.
They wouldn't think it. They wouldn't see the connection. If you go back in history, you can find out. You
Of
can see
course.
it, and you can even hear it. Like, the odd thing was, my wife is from Kenya, so she's from Africa, and listening to some of the traditional music, it sounds like country music,
That's
like
right.
100%,
That's right.
100%.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Notice that.
all her cousins, uncles, they all love American country music. That's their favorite form
Yeah.
of music because they say it sounds so much like home. It's got that home feel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
listening to the Kenyan music, it's like country music. It's in a different language. I don't understand what they're saying,
Yeah.
but it's country music 100%. And I'm like, oh
100%.
wow,
100%.
kind of
100%, bro.
strange. So I'm like, I can see
You can
how
see
country
how
blues, yeah.
Yeah, you can see how it went from like slave songs to actually I traced it back to, like I'm a PhD study to African greats, storytellers to like slave songs to like playing the dozens and blues music and then just the trajectory and then actually going out to Jamaica, the sound systems and R&B and then even the sound system in Jamaica and obviously Cool Herc went out there, he's Jamaican and brought that sound system called Jabak in the 70s and it's just a huge divergent the diaspora, the African American the African diaspora. Yeah.
It's amazing. A few weeks ago, I went to see my brother. My brother, he lives in Vegas, but we met in New Orleans a few weeks ago, and he's actually working with like a heavyweight boxer. He's from Africa, actually, right?
Oh, dope.
From Cameroon, I think. And then so we go to New Orleans, and he's in his full African garb. He's like a prince or whoever from there.
What's his name? What's his name?
His name is Carlos. And
I'm just trying to think. So I love boxing.
Oh, I'm gonna send you.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna have him. I'm gonna be interviewing him.
Yeah.
Here in a little bit.
I'm just trying to think. I don't know. Has he just started off as a professional?
No, he's been in the game for a while, and he's a champion. He won the Olympics at one point. Like
Olympic gold medalist.
Yeah.
Who could be?
Yeah.
What year did he win his Olympics?
Those are good questions. Those are things I need to learn, in fact, about him. The dude is amazing, but he's one of the nicest guys, like one of the most humble people you'll ever meet. Very generous, very cool, very intelligent. Like he knows all kinds of histories, and his story is just amazing. The dude's story is amazing. But when he came to New Orleans, he wanted to eat like fried alligator and things like this. So I was like, okay, sure. So we went and we walked, and he's just telling me like, wow, I just love this place. This place. We went and saw the slave quarters, like the where they used to go and they used to sell things. The slaves used to get together and have a marketplace. It was called Congo Park.
Yeah.
And he was there playing the bongos with everyone there. So it was like a big event. And he was like, this place is like home, man. This is just like home. The people, the food, everything.
Absolutely.
And it's like, because this
ambience.
This is the capital of the Caribbean. New Orleans is considered the capital of the Caribbean. You're going to see all kinds of cultures. You're going to see
big
so much. Big melting pot. The traditional food is still there. And it's even like that where I'm at in Florida.
It's like that in Brazil, bro. Brazil has like basically a lot of African, like even symbolism and traditions even now. Like that's actually one of the better preserved African sort of like that the slaves who were colonized, who were taken there, actually protected a lot of their ancestry in Brazil.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The diaspora, like you said, it's everywhere. Black people are everywhere. See, Black Americans don't know that. It was a joke. It's like they may say, I thought the black people were only in Mississippi, man. I thought they
Yeah,
only came from Mississippi. Like,
yeah.
no,
But
they're
there's some
everywhere,
people, there's
brother.
some black people in America who don't think there's any black people in Britain, for example. Like,
Right.
yes, there is.
Why
Yeah,
is he
like,
talking like a white guy?
yeah,
Yeah, it's hilarious, man. It's hilarious, but and I blame that on the education system here
yeah.
in
Of course,
America.
yeah,
There's very
of
little
course.
you learn
It's very
about.
insular because, like, a lot of Americans I know don't have passports and stuff, or
Mhm.
if they do, they would only go to like Canada or the Caribbean.
Mhm.
They won't
Yep.
really. I guess occasionally they may venture to Europe, but not much. But like you
Mhm.
say, it's very insular, the history that is taught in the States, and like you
Mhm.
say, it's very much a white man's history of
Yes.
what's went down. Like, yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
Absolutely. It
very
really is.
romanticized. You know what I mean?
It really is.
Yeah,
And,
it is. It is.
and it's cultural. It's like the movies that you would watch, like that I would watch as a kid. I think there were very few black
Cowboys and
sitcoms.
Indians. The Cowboys are the good
Cowboys and
guys.
Indians. The Indians were the bad guys. Yeah,
It's like, could be further from the truth.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
so funny how life is in America, and it's now getting to a point where we're getting exposed to a lot of information. Thank goodness to the internet and
Oh
things of
yes,
that nature.
yeah. The worm is turning.
It really
Black Lives
is.
Matter, particularly. Yeah. Hmm.
Absolutely. And there's so much to be said. And it's starting to become very conscious and aware. There a lot of people are going kicking and screaming.
Oh yeah,
That's
being
normal. You
dragged.
would
They're being
expect it
dragged.
if we're going from what we're talking about. And if that was real, you would expect a lot of kicking and screaming. And that's exactly what we see.
Exactly.
But it's
Exactly. Exactly.
slowly coming
It's
into vogue, man.
reluctant acceptance. Yeah.
Reluctant
Yeah.
acceptance. That's right, because
Yeah.
it's a change. And nobody wants to face up to the
No.
reality of what it is,
No.
nobody really wants to. A lot of people feel some kind of way about their history.
Of course.
And
Of course. It's an uncomfortable history because, particularly, more out there than here, was also discovered during my studies and stuff, and also just being out there as well, is
mhm,
like in terms of the States, like people were more like, obviously black people were forcibly taken there, whereas generally here, whilst we did operate a slave trade, it stopped a lot sooner than the States. People came here, black people came here to work after the war, where
mhm,
because they were part of the Commonwealth, like Jamaica and stuff, Nigeria. We invited
mhm,
them over. They were invited the black people here to work to fill the gaps that were left by the war dead, and
mhm,
so obviously they settled as a result. So it's kind of, they were welcomed. Well, I guess you could, obviously the local populace, I guess, would not be as welcoming as they could be, but the government welcomed them with open arms, and it wasn't bloodshed, and we didn't need to have a civil war to assimilate black people here. So you know what I mean? It was
mm,
just slightly different and more recent, and not as I guess as as bad in a way as
yeah.
the States version of it, or the Caribbean version of it. Where, yeah, I mean,
Well,
yes,
yeah.
so
And
so
there
we
there
obviously, people were taken to Jamaica, but we obviously had the immigrants who came from Jamaica over here, like, willingly.
mhm.
Yeah.
Well, there is an entire history with black people here in America that they don't share with Africans or Haitians or
Exactly.
Jamaicans. And the thing about that is that in America there is a residual of anger and
Oh yeah. Oh
resentment
yeah. Oh
and
yeah. Big time. Yeah.
even social pressures, like
Mhm.
you can sort of feel as a black person some kind of way if you're in a totally white neighborhood or a totally white
Mhm.
environment.
Mhm.
You're going to feel that you carry some kind of baggage with you.
Yeah.
And some white folks unfortunately may um assume you a lot of things about black Americans,
Oh
that they're
yeah.
this
Sure.
way and that they're that way, and all they have to see is one little behavior, and then they've already assumed that, yeah, you're just like every other black person that
Yeah.
exists, and they don't even
Yeah.
maybe know any black people, but
Yeah.
they've just
Exactly.
been indoctrinated by what they've been told all their life.
Yeah.
And there's stereotypes on that are perpetuated in the media in our,
100%. 100%.
but say there, you could say, and I only speak this from experience, listening to my ex-wife talk about it,
Mhm.
is say her relationship with other Black American people, where she maybe comes from an environment that doesn't have that same history. So there
Yes.
isn't this sort of resentment against the white people, and
No,
there
not at
isn't
all.
this, not at
Not
all,
any
like
way, shape, or
like
form.
there's just, I don't understand what the problem is there. And
Mhm.
so there's a little disconnect in
Yeah,
communication.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
always try to tell her, like, yeah, there's just a whole other cultural thing you're raised from, because my stepbrother is Black too.
yeah.
So,
Mhm.
and we grew up, I went to all Black schools from the time small. My mother, one of, my stepbrother's mother was a gospel singer, used to play in the Chitlin circuit. So I was always around gospel music and,
Yeah.
Black American church and this and that
Mhm.
coming up. And so I was in the neighborhoods, I was in the
Mhm.
schools, I was around it. And so I kind of had an understanding of the anger and the resentment and the communication that was going on.
Yeah, sure.
And it's really hard for someone on the outside to kind of understand what the dynamic there.
Oh yeah,
And
100%.
and so I can see how what you're saying kind of rings true, that
Mhm.
if you're inviting Nigerians and people like Jamaicans
Yeah.
to your country to work and do things, I can see that there's not going to be a lot of bloodshed and problems,
I mean, it's
like
not
America.
perfect, but there's not the same. I mean, obviously, there's been a kind of a few notable uprisings here and there, but
Hmm.
largely peaceful. And I would say the assimilation in the UK has been handled better than the assimilation in the States, because, as you said, the underlying resentment on both sides over there.
Hmm.
Whereas
Hmm.
I've never noticed that to be as anywhere near the how bad, sorry, how the problems over there have not been rectified, sorry, replicated over here to the same degree. No.
Hmm. Hmm. And and I look at a place like France, where they have immigrants like from Congo and from
Oh yeah.
Nigeria,
Mhm.
and those folks, there's always some sort of protest or uprising. And I wonder
Yes.
what's going on there, like
Yeah,
what's that all about?
France is, they're just different, bro. They're just different to the UK. I'm gonna admit. I mean, there's some countries in Europe which still have terrible racism at their soccer games, particularly in the Eastern
Hmm.
Europe.
Hmm.
Yeah, I saw there was a guy in Paris who got racially abused on a train in Paris, and he wasn't
Hmm.
doing anything to anybody, and I was like shocked by that, because I've never seen that happen in London ever.
Right.
I'm sure it does happen, but I've just never seen it. So I don't know. I can't slam France too much, but
Hmm.
again, you
Well, it's just
know,
stuff you hear, like
we're
it's
just more
like,
accepting, because, bro, there's a reason why there's lots of immigrants waiting at the Channel Tunnel who are waiting to come through into the UK. Like, they're waiting to just get through from France over to here. Yes, okay. I guess we treat our immigrants better.
mhm.
I guess, but I guess also the climate of this country is just less fierce than France can be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, where they may look at immigrants in general as a
Germany's
threat.
very tolerant as well, though. Germany's very
Yeah,
tolerant, actually.
very tolerant, very
Yeah.
tolerant, and
Mhm.
and there's a big American presence there, anyways,
Yes,
and
indeed,
so
indeed,
they
indeed.
really have gotten used to the American culture, which we a lot of Black people are in the military, and
Yeah,
they
yeah,
see
hundred
this all the
percent.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm.
but that, and that kind of goes back to you and your career, that the one thing that's kind of helped racial relations and culture is hip hop. Look
Oh
at you.
wow, has
You're
it
from
ever?
a
Mhm.
Newcastle.
That's right.
Somehow you became into the culture, and you've been a big contributor and person who's
Thank you.
actually helped shape the culture, which is
Crazy.
huge.
Yeah, I
That's
know.
crazy. A
I
white
know.
dude from the UK
Yeah, I
helped
know.
shape hip hop culture.
Yeah,
Amazing. Imagine that.
it's the sort of thing that sounds like it comes from a book. But yeah, yeah, it's to even be mentioned alongside some of these greats, and for people to say, to call me, I guess the legend word or whatever. And for you to say that I've helped shape these this thing called hip hop is just amazing. And I've been putting the work in, and it's a beautiful thing to hear. And I feel blessed. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you are,
Yeah,
man. You've done a great service, man.
thank you,
You've
bro.
actually contributed. Look, I was just talking to 95 North, another underground house music
Yo,
group,
yeah,
and I'll tell you, like I told them, like music appeals to emotion, and
it really does.
there is somebody that you've touched that has made their life that much better. I mean,
Oh, bro, seriously, some of the things I hear without I would never name names, but one lady told me that before she heard my latest album with Arrested Development, she was close to doing the unthinkable, and then she heard
mm,
the uplifting positive tone of our tracks, and she
wow.
just thought twice about it. And I was like, wow, this is
Mm.
like, if this is not the biggest compliment anyone could pay you, I don't know what is, bro. Because it
You
was,
can't put a price on that.
honest to God, that's the power of music. That right there, right there.
That's exactly that.
Crazy. Yeah.
Same sort of story they gave me, like somebody was at their wits' end and heard this song that was so
Yeah.
uplifting and
Yeah.
changed their life. And that's the beauty of music and how we're able to communicate across racial lines, across national lines and everything
100%.
else. Man,
100%, bro.
what an honor, man, to be part of that. And what an honor for me to sit down and hear these things and hear this story and know you a lot better than
Oh,
just the
thank you,
guy I
bro.
see on my Facebook feed every
Yeah, yeah,
morning.
yeah. Likewise. It's really good to
Yeah.
talk to you finally, bro.
Oh,
Like, properly
absolutely.
talk to you. Yeah.
That's what it is, man. That's what it is. That's part of the reason I wanted to do this because I see a lot
After
of
so
very
long.
interesting people on my
Yeah.
feed. Like, these are people in the music industry, but I'm not really sure what kind of conversation I can really trigger here.
Yeah.
So boom, I said, let me just start a platform where I can just talk to these guys and get to
Exactly,
know them, and
man.
then bless the community, like let other people hear the same thing in real time. And that's
100%.
that's 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 what it is, bro.
That's dope,
Absolutely,
bro.
man.
That's dope, man. Because you've been bubbling away. Like I remember you had your radio thing going, but I think this is
hmm
your natural home. This is
That's
it.
what it is. I love it. I love it because I love talking. I love hearing. I love learning. I love.
100%. Great questions too, man.
Thank you, brother.
So
Thank you, man. I know that's what the people need to hear. Well, look, man, I
100%.
do want to respect your time, and I got a little gig to go to here in about
Yeah.
15 minutes, so
Yeah.
I better get the running.
Yeah, no doubt. Who you
But
gonna see? Who you gonna see?
I'm gonna actually try to talk to I'm gonna talk to Juan. He's a guy who actually found who was a disco producer way back in the 70s. I'm gonna try to
Wow.
talk to him. If not him, I'm gonna talk to Arabian Prince.
Oh wow.
He's the guy I
Okay.
need to get with here in a few minutes, though,
Yeah.
to actually sit down and give him a call. So I've got to
Wow.
get with him in a few
That's deep.
minutes. Arabian Prince has a great story to tell.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
man. Legend.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, we're gonna keep them coming, man. I've got a whole list of folks that I've got
That's dope.
lined up, man.
I'm blessed to be asked already, man. So that's
Yeah,
dope.
dude. If you can
Appreciate it.
help me, this channel will blow up, and then everybody
No
that's
doubt.
along with the ride is gonna blow up along with it, and their story is gonna be
100%,
heard.
man.
Absolutely, brother. All right, my dude. I'm gonna get off here, man. I
Okay,
thank you
bro.
again,
Thank
and
me,
we
man.
will. Yes, sir. You have a good one.
You too. Peace out.